I want to jump into this stuff. So the purpose of today's webinar is to go over the FIRE movement and go over the different flavors that might apply to you. And I think that this will be something that you will enjoy learning about, because I think that something that's made a big difference in my life is just learning about the concepts of financial independence. And I hope that you'll learn from it too. So in the Q&A today, let's just see what you would most like to do if you reached financial independence. What would be your next move? So and I'm gonna see here. I'm gonna look in this Q&A and see what your next move would be. That's the question. What will your next move be in the Q&A if you got financial dependence? So someone says living in Italy. Someone says retire. What are some other folks' answers? Let's see if we want to have some other. Work less, not take overnight call. That's a good one. Travel all the time, work part-time, write fiction. I like that one. That's what my wife's answer would be. Um, So I've got a short presentation for you today, and then I thought I would try to just do some stuff live for fun. Just try to make this a fun and enjoyable, uh, you know, day, hour. So anyways, let me go ahead and share my screen, and we'll jump into this presentation. All right, 5 flavors of the FIRE movement and how you can use them to live your ideal life. And then if I see anything in the Q&A, I'm going to maybe just look there for any kind of comments you'll have today. So 5 flavors of the FIRE movement. Here's the 5 flavors: traditional, lean, fat, barista, and coast. So I'm going to explain what each one of these means. And then if people have any like suggestions in the Q&A for, you know, for what I should maybe build spreadsheet wise live just for fun, maybe we'll do that. So traditional financial independence, lean, fat, barista, and coast. So these are 5 different flavors. There even is more than this, of course, but I just wanted to go over these just so that you have just some awareness of different options that you have available to you. So I think it's pretty exciting to discuss this. So, uh, just so you know that I'm a credible messenger, I did do financial independence back when I was a younger man. I did go for the lean version of FI, which I'll explain and what that is in a moment. And I traveled the world for a year and a half. So I quit my job as a bond trader, traveled the world for a year and a half, had a lot of fun, and then really kind of got bored, honestly, and also got engaged and decided, well, I needed to get I wanted to use my skills to help others. And this, student loan planner kind of ended up happening. So in terms of, options of what FI can do for you, financial independence, you can go from wherever you're at right now to traveling the world for a year and a half, or that person that says living in Italy, like maybe that could happen sooner. Some people mentioned like racing, a couple other people mentioned, let me see what some of the other people mentioned, work less, not taking overnight call. Maybe with some of these different strategies, you could do that a lot sooner. So I'm going to essentially go over each one of these types of FIRE, and then maybe just build some spreadsheets to show you some examples of different ones based off of what people want to see. So traditional FI, 4% rule. So the 4% rule is something you might have heard of before. Essentially, the idea is you get a big investing portfolio. Let's say it's $1 million, and then you live off of dividends and interest and capital gains. So most, kind of financial people think that 4% of a total portfolio is something that you could live off of long term. So traditional financial independence says, okay, let's say your expenses are 80,000 a year. Take 80,000 and divide by 0.04, and that's $2 million. So your financial independence number is $2 million in that case. That's the traditional financial independence metric. Now, the question you might ask for this type of FI is, what expenses do you need to live a normal life, right? How much do you need to spend to have just a normal life? That's your calculation of financial independence. Typically, people use typical stocks and bonds portfolios for this. And what we see for this type of financial independence is people typically have a net worth, excluding student loans, of about 1 to 2 million. So that's usually this type of financial independence. Now, in contrast, there's something called lean FI. That's number 2 on the list of 5 flavors of FIRE. So number 2, lean FI. Lean FI is defined by low expenses and a DIY attitude. So if you think about lean FI, the real type of person this appeals to is somebody who just like enjoys frugality. Most people don't, but some people are kind of weird and and they really like it's like a sport. How little can I spend? Now, this was the path that I was on pre-marriage, and then my wife was like, "You can keep doing that, but you can do it single." And so like that was kind of my thought process is, well, I don't need a lot of money to be happy. I can spend very little and just, that way I need a lot less to hit my financial independence number, right? So notice that the typical net worth for lean fi is about 400K to a million. It's a lot lower, lot lower than the 20 to 40K type expense. So that's I think kind of meaningful for somebody who just really wants financial independence like immediately, like right away. How do I reach FI like now, right? Because if you have a lower spending number, obviously you need lower wealth to accommodate that. Something to think about is lean FI does have some pretty unique options available compared to the other flavors of fire. So one of the things you could do with lean fi is because your AGI is so low, you're probably able to qualify for very generous subsidies under the ACA Health Exchange. So if you think about, health insurance expenses being one of the big costs, that's something that you could potentially not have to worry about if your AGI is low enough where you don't have to worry about health insurance subsidies. Or, there's also something called cost sharing assistance. So if your AGI is generally speaking between 100 and 150% of the poverty line, that you can also get almost no deductibles for medical insurance as well. So it's really pretty powerful. So that's the lean FI. Most people are not going to fall in that category because, it's pretty challenging to do, especially if you have children. It's just not really realistic for probably a lot of people. Now, the opposite of lean fi is fat fi. So fat fi is the goal to live a lifestyle without restriction. Now, some people think of fat fi as, well, if I'm going to walk away from a career that I spent years doing, then I've got to have this be, the most surefire thing in the world, which means that you want to have way more than you think you need to be able to truly feel comfortable that you can actually do the no work thing, right? So fat fi is something where people essentially like they retire, like they want to enjoy life. They don't want to have to feel like they're on a very strict budget. They don't want to have to worry about their spending. So this is something that probably appeals more to high income professionals, obviously, because you can't reach fat fi unless you have a high income, just mathematically. So think about this type of person has probably got a net worth of $3 to $10 million one day. And in my view, at least, Physician on Fire's, he sold his site, but I think he popularized this type of fire just because, a lot of people that are higher income earners can reach this level of fire. And, that's pretty cool. I think, I mean, if that's what you want to do, the downside is it takes a lot longer to reach this level of fire, but it's still, it's still possible, especially if you have a higher income. So Baristify is kind of interesting because a lot of people suffer from burnout, especially in medical professions. And the goal with Baristify is essentially to get a lower stress job that does have health insurance and some benefits, right? So I think that this is most common for people that are suffering burnout issues, just really stressed and just really need to make a change for their mental health. The idea, I think, with Baristify is that life is too short to wait to make changes if you're really stressed and burned out. Now, a common example of this type of financial independence is somebody that's a Starbucks barista, for example. That's where the name Baristify comes from. But really, any type of lower stress job with benefits could qualify. So think of this as you've got some assets, you've got some savings, you have, you don't spend that much money, but you also might have some serious reasons why you need to have good health insurance. This is kind of an attractive option for somebody in that situation. No, Coast Fi is you've saved enough to not have to worry about how much you save anymore. So this is actually the most common type of financial independence I see in the SLP community. So essentially what happens is people like save a ton of money early in their careers and they build up a very significant like amount of savings relative to their spending, usually by their mid to late 30s. And what happens is people don't even realize that because they've been busting their tail saving so much money, they now no longer need to save as much later. So, if that makes any sense, right? So the really high savings rate early and then low savings rate later, that's what defines Coast-Fi. Now, Coast-Fi, what does the word come from, right? Coast, like just to ride out without having to do any work. That's the idea behind this one. So think about like if you've already got a lot of savings, you don't have to work nearly as hard to have a lot of savings to reach where you want to be. So in other words, for example, let's say you worked, 5, 6 days a week in your 20s, 30s, and let's say you've saved up a significant amount of money and you're sort of like modestly frugal, not extreme frugality, but like modestly, right? So the idea is that you could cut your hours, you could take away that night call, you could reduce your the worst parts of your job, you could take a lower stress job and actually have a lower savings rate, and then that math would work out where you could still be able to afford to retire. Um, so what about the RE part of FIRE, retire early? So there's a misconception that FIRE means that you retire early. It doesn't actually mean that. You can retire early if you want to, but some people will want the option, others will want to, but you don't have to, right? So if you think about what that means, um, so retire early, so a lot of people have this perception of the FIRE movement that it's a bunch of weirdos that all want to retire in their 40s. Doesn't need to be that. And by the way, a FIRE movement, it kind of sounds like a cult. My wife jokes that it's definitely a cult. I think it just is a thing that bubbled up on the internet in the 2000s where people that were stuck in the 1990s movie The Office, if you've ever seen that, or Office Space, not The Office, that's a series. Oops. Well, Office Space, remember how miserable the guy is in that goes to work every day and he's doesn't enjoy life because his work is so terrible. So, I mean, people that were stuck in that type of world pre, remote work with the pandemic and everything, um, they had options they didn't really realize they had, and the internet made it possible for all these people to find each other and realize all the hacks that they were using to be able to achieve this unconventional lifestyle. So, retire early is not retiring in your 40s necessarily. It could be if you wanted it to be that, but it could be retiring in your 50s. It could be, retiring in your 30s. It could be retiring at a traditional age as well. It's up to you. That's the key thing. One fun little thing you might say, what is this 10 million medical professional test? One thing I love to ask our medical professional clients, like dentists, veterinarians, physicians, etc., is I like to say, if you had $10 million, what would you do tomorrow? If you had $10 million, what would you do tomorrow? Would you stop working? I'll say probably 80 to 90% of people say no. And I say, okay, well, if you wouldn't stop working, what would you change? And they'll say, well, I would cut my hours or I'd cut my evening call shifts or I'd, tell them I want more research support, if they want to keep me or something like that. And usually, not always, but usually the people who want those things, that's actually achievable pretty quickly and they don't even realize it. Because a lot of times people's finances are such that they don't realize that they could afford to do certain things, especially when you look at tax rates and things like that. Um, knowing that you have the option to retire early is really good, even if you don't end up doing so, right? I'll give you another example. There was a really interesting story I heard about a senior physician who was, kind of in his late 50s, early 60s, and he was being asked to take night call. He was a subspecialist, but he's being asked to take night call for a um, essentially a generic uh, you know field, instead of his surgical subspecialty. He was because the hospital executives decided that it was too expensive to get people that would be actually paid for night call. And so they just decided they could just dump this responsibility on all of the subspecialists across all the hospital. So a lot of the people just went along with it because they were afraid. They were afraid to lose their jobs. They're afraid to not get bonuses. They were afraid to have a reduction in pay. But this particular doctor who did have financial independence essentially was just told them, absolutely not. You can't make me to do that. And if you want to make me do that, you can then fire me. And then good luck finding another person to do this, to do my job for what you're asking people to do for this, and that was really fascinating. I thought that was really cool. So a lot of times it's all about pushing back and having boundaries, right? A lot of times, if you ever done therapy before, a lot of times therapists will talk about having healthy boundaries is really important. It's also important at work. If you're being asked to do something at work that you think is not okay, it's important to feel comfortable that you can do that. So alternatives to fire, you don't have to go for this financial independence path. You could also do something called a sabbatical. And maybe you've heard of sabbaticals, but the general gist of it is you take a period intentionally away from work that is short enough that you could be reemployed. So I know that there's some fields like, my wife is a surgeon, so she feels like she couldn't go longer than 6 months or something like that without losing her skills. That would be not not a good thing for her patients. So this is going to be dependent on your profession. But if your profession is such that it is, if your profession is such that it's like highly specialized, then maybe you have a shorter period that you can take away. But if it's a little bit less specialized, you could probably take a longer period away from it And the whole idea is instead of trying to build up to a 400K net worth or something like that, like we were talking about, you build up to a 100K net worth and exclude your student loans from this calculation because you can do income driven repayment on those, right? So if you could build up to 100K, 200K of total assets, excluding student loans, if you have federal student loans only, you really actually have enough now to do a sabbatical of an extended period. And this is pretty helpful. This is like something that allows you to do a lot of the things that people want to do when they say they want to retire, like travel to Italy, do the racing, do the hike the Appalachian Trail, whatever your thing is. This would allow you to do it because a sabbatical is like happening when you're young and healthy, whereas financial dependence might happen when you're in your 40s. You know, a little bit maybe TMI, but I'm in my 30s, got back pain all the time, got like joint pain sometimes, like, and I'm fairly young. That's like, I'm like, oh man, what does 50 feel like? You know what I mean? So it's like all these things that I wish I'd done in my 20s. I have more money now than I need, and most of you will have that experience too, right? Most of you, as you get older, probably you will have more money than you need, probably, because most people that turn into a webinar early in the morning on a Wednesday to talk about financial independence are disproportionately nerdy and good with their finances, right? So that means that like you will probably have way more than you need. And so the idea of a sabbatical not being an option really shouldn't be on the table. It's probably definitely an option, even if you're having a kind of a period where you think that maybe that's a little bit hard to do, but you definitely could do this. Now, ultimately, you want to choose what makes you happiest. That is the goal here. That is the point, right? I think that the sabbatical option is better than taking some like lower stress, low wage job because a lot of times burnout and the stress that people face can be like limited or can be relieved a little bit just by like having a break, right? Um, this is going to make me sound like a hardcore like dad, but I'm going to say it anyway, right? So like, you know, a lot of dads like watching like World War II stuff or something like that on the TV. And like one of the things they do is they rotate troops in those documentaries, right? So if people had a lot of contact, a lot of fighting, intense fighting, they take you back off the line and they let you rest. We don't have that culture in medicine or veterinary medicine or dentistry or law or anything like that. We have this culture of go, 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 work, 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 work. You get your vacation, whatever the employer says is okay. And sometimes it's very strategic to take time off the line, so to speak, just to build your mental reserves and your mental health back up if you're having a hard time. So I highly suggest the sabbatical path if these other 5 flavors of FI are not for you. Just to recap these flavors, and then I'll just get to some questions. So remember, traditional, which is like the one you've heard about for financial independence, the 4% rule. Lean, which is something that you do if you're like, I got to retire right now. I want to spend nothing. Fat Fire, which is like, I want to live in not only in Italy, but I want to live in a villa in Italy. That's Fat Fire, and that takes longer to achieve. Baristify, that's if you're like, I'm burned out, I want health insurance, I want a low stress job, I'm just going to take something like that. And then Coastfi, take your foot off the gas, you're a lot better off than you think you are. You can essentially relax a little bit and maybe make some of the changes you're looking to make a lot sooner. So if I go to, before I make some spreadsheets, I'll just express what this is. So this is our RAA, our investment advisory firm, SLP Wealth. If you want our help figuring out what your best path for financial independence looks like, and you want us to help you implement it, then you can become a client of SLP Wealth for a fee that's a lot lower than anywhere else that I think you'll find. If you click on that link or you scan that QR code, I'll just wait for like 2 seconds for people to scan that QR code before I click on it. And then if we go to what that is, essentially what this is going to ask is, have you done a student loan planner consult before? And how much debt do you have? If you say that you have student debt and you haven't done a consult, it's going to take you to a package deal where you get a big discount off your consult if you also book the second meeting, which is the first financial planning meeting. That's $99 a month. And then you do your student loan consult. If you've already done your student loan consult, then it's just going to take you directly to schedule. And we have occupation specific groups at SLP Wealth. So you'll be matched into whatever occupation specific financial planning group that you want to be a part of. So for example, we have a dental group, we have a physicians group, we have a veterinarian group. And that's pretty cool that that's available for $99 a month. So now I'm going to go back and show you a couple things too. The financial independence calculator on our website, a lot of people don't know it exists. But by the way, if you ever go to calculators on our website and studentloanplanner.com, you can look and find this financial independence calculator, and it's got a lot of cool stuff to calculate when could you reach financial independence, essentially. So if we go to, how, when would you reach financial independence, right? Let's say a savings rate of 25, which is a lot better than 10, you can figure out how long it takes you to reach financial independence. So again, that's on our website under the calculators tab. All right, so let me stop my screen share. I'm going to look at some of the questions that are coming in. So yeah, so somebody says about the lean fi path. So they're saying, does your spending have to stay really light for the rest of your life? Well, I mean, these are all just like loose categories, right? There's no hard and fast rules to any of this. So lean fi, yeah, technically, if you build up a 400,000 portfolio and you want that to last forever, yeah, your spending's got to stay really low. What I typically find happens is when you quit the thing that you weren't as passionate about, if that's what you do, then you find something else to make money, right? You find something else that you enjoy doing and you start making money, and then it helps you a lot. And then you start building up money like even faster than you thought you would. So that's like something to think about, is like when you take time away and you pursue other passions, some of those passions end up making money. Like student loan planner is an example of that. I didn't necessarily plan on going and starting a big business to help people with student loans. It just sort of happened as I naturally pursued interests once I was no longer a bond trader. So a lot of times lean fi can be an entryway into you finding something that you're more passionate about than whatever it is that you did with your first step. So somebody is asking about, is this business only for business owners, or do we just only advise on personal finances? Somebody says, do you work with just tech workers? Um, we work with everybody. We work with everybody. Mainly, our specialty is people that are trying to pursue financial independence that happen to have student loan debt, obviously, because student loan planner, right? But that's the main folks that we help. And yes, we do work with business owners. I'll share again the presentation with that QR code. So what you'd find after clicking on that and answering those questions is you'd find, like, are you an employee, or are you a business owner, in the questions for how for the matching you with the planner. We do help business owners, but we help non-business owners too, because each person has a different consideration. So I'll give you an example. Let's give you an example, right? Let's say you're an employee, let's say you're W-2, both of you. Let's say you have a spouse, you're both W-2, and your thing is that only one of you has loans. Well, you need to file separately for taxes, right? So now you need to do backdoor Roth IRAs every year. You have to do a conversion from a traditional after tax to a Roth every year, and you have to report it right on your taxes, right? You also have to be thinking, who claims dependents on the tax return, to make sure that when we provide automatic permission for the IRS to certify your income for IDR, that you're claiming the right person. For other things with W-2 people, if you're at a hospital, you might have like 6 different types of pre-tax accounts that you could maximize that you probably are not optimizing. So like things like 403B, 457, 401A, HSA. There's all kinds of different options like this. If you're a business owner, there's also a lot of things you could do to save money. So I'll give you some examples. Are you set up as an S corporation or not? Are you paying yourself a reasonable wage so that you can take the rest as a dividend to not have to pay Social Security tax? Are you setting up a retirement plan? And are you aware of all the different tax credits available to businesses for those retirement plans? Are you doing a solo 401k? Are you maximizing that by putting the right amount into your solo 401k? There's something called the qualified business income deduction. A lot of business owners, if you keep your AGI low enough, even in professional service categories, if your income is below a certain threshold, you can claim those deductions, right? Tax loss harvesting, minimizing investment expenses, keeping tax efficiency high. There's like a gazillion ways for 99 a month to pay for itself. And so that's, we have about, I think, 1,200 clients or something like that. That's households. I guess we have probably 2,000 actual humans as clients. And it's just because I think that the pricing is good and the niche is specific. So, there's not a lot of folks out there that do student loan specific stuff. Now, if you're already an SLP Wealth client, if any of these fire stuff concepts are appealing to you or interesting to you, like just send a message to your advisor in Nudge. That's our communication platform. Just go ahead and send a message to your advisor and get a 30 minutes focus meeting scheduled so that you can discuss how to best like modify your financial plan to incorporate some of these ideas into your financial plan. Let me go and look at more questions real quick here. So if you have any questions about any of the fire stuff, let me know, and I could even try to see if I could build some spreadsheets if people want to see that. So I'll just wait to see what kind of questions come in. One thing I think that's interesting about the fire movement is, it's not just for weirdos, LOL. I mean, it's for normal people to pick whatever flavor that's best for you, right? People are going to ultimately decide, different things for different reasons. So I think that my favorite path is whatever you wanted to do, like whatever was on your mind about something that would make your life better, you should make that a priority within the next year. Like if your goal is to eliminate night call or to go work fewer hours or to live in Italy or whatever it is, I think that you should work to come up with a plan to achieve that in literally a year or less. I think most people, not everybody, but most people could. Most people can pull different levers with their finances, move different things around, do different stuff with, like I said, all the different tools in the toolbox and achieve, at least for a time, maybe not permanently, right? But maybe you get to live that dream of living in Italy for 6 months. Or maybe you get to cut your hours for the next 5 years while your kids are little. Or maybe you get to, um, you know, buy a house, but you're more intentional about how you go about doing it because of, I don't know, keeping the square footage small, but buying a newer house so you have lower maintenance expenses to free yourself up to do other things. So let's see if there's any other questions that popped in here. Um, for the calculator, the financial independence calculator, somebody says, is the household income gross or net of taxes? Go ahead and say gross of taxes. A couple people have asked about some other things here. So let's see. Yeah, so I mean, so somebody says, how often do you meet with your financial advisor? So typically we meet like 2 or 3 times up front over the course of a couple months, just to get to know you, get to take some action items to make some actual corrections and fixes in your plan. Um, and then, after that, it's usually semi-annual unless something big comes up, if that makes sense. So we do semi-annual check-ins. And if there's something that happens in between those semi-annual check-ins, we do a 30-minute focus meeting just to talk about a specific thing that pops up. So it'd be like buying a house, um, buying a car, changing jobs, like looking at your tax withholding if you're a tax client of ours, your retirement contributions, whatever it is, talking about financial independence. People are asking for the discount code because I'm so smart. And then, oh, wait a second here. Panel attendees can chat with everyone. Oh, can y'all try the chat now? I think I just turned on the chat. Let's see if I did. Yay. Oh my gosh. Well, I don't know if you want to I don't know if you want to get financial planning from a guy who's such an idiot that he can't figure out how to turn on the chat until near the end of the presentation. Uh, but yeah, let me now that I have that, I'll try to put in that discount link into the chat so people can just click it. So there's that link in the chat. So it's now in the chat. You can click on that, and then that'll take you to get that discount code for the very cheap financial planning. I'm going to answer some more questions while people are doing that. Let's see. Yeah, I think that so somebody says I tried to get that spread or that financial independence calculator, but I never got it. I mean, that's why we put it on the website, just because some people don't have Excel. Some people don't have the ability to use that tool. And so that's why we tried to build something out on the website for it. We're always trying to build free resources and tools for you guys. And if you ever have suggestions for that, let me know. Yeah. Thanks. Somebody goes, we don't expect you to be a Zoom wizard. I appreciate that. All I can do is Excel. Let's see. So somebody goes, yeah, so there's a couple people have some loan questions that I'll answer in a second. Real quick, a couple like resources if you're interested in financial independence, right? There's the Choose FI podcast. I've been on that podcast a few times. That's a really fun one. It's very motivating. There's Mr. Money Mustache, which is in more of like the lean fi camp. There's Physician on Fire, which is like the fat fire movement of people that want to have millions and millions of dollars one day and retire. And then there's the sabbatical people That's like Jillian Johnsrud. If you type in her name, she's really into the sabbatical movement. So essentially, any one of these concepts that we talked about would allow you to would essentially allow you to like dive deeper into each one of these niches if you're interested. So for the last like maybe, I don't know, 10 minutes or so, we'll just have you ask whatever questions that are on your mind. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. If you want to see me try to do, somebody else said catching up to 5 podcasts for late starters. So if you have any things you'd like to see me try to build live, maybe we could do a little Excel challenge here, see if I can build it. Or, if you have any topics about financial independence you'd like me to cover, just let me know. Somebody says, what was the podcast that was mentioned? So Choose FI is the biggest one. And there's Catching Up to FI. One of the people recommended that as well. So while I do that, while I wait for other people's comments or questions in the chat or the Q&A, I'll just answer a quick question somebody had. So they said that there's lots of repayment options in the academic sector, but if you're graduating and entering private practice, what kind of path can you have for financial independence if you're in private practice and not getting any of these like PSLF type forgiveness programs, right? So I think that it's a misnomer or misconception that there's not a lot of good options for people in the private sector, right? Obviously, you can do 20 or 25-year forgiveness, but you can also do 20 or you can also do major interest subsidies, right? So think about these financial independence like kind of strategies. Like let's say that you go and make 200,000, 300,000 a year as an attending physician for like 2, 3 years and you build up a lot of savings. Well, if you're on the save plan, if you file extensions of your tax returns the right way, and you time everything the right way, you could get really low payments on save and get interest subsidies of almost all your interest for the first like 2 years after training, right? Maybe even 3, depending on how your tax returns look. And what that would do is, let's say you want to take a sabbatical for 6 months in between jobs to get some time that you never had in training to yourself to enjoy some hobbies before you work another 25, 30 years. So if you did that, you could be on save and get interest subsidies during that sabbatical as well. And then eventually get towards the point where you're paying down your loans if that's the best path because your debt's smaller than your income. So the cool thing about financial independence and like why we got into financial planning, honestly, I think is just because I think student loan borrowers have unique needs and unique things going on with their lives. And it's just special to be able to help people fix those problems because, somebody with 300,000 medical school loans that just finished, that's been in private practice for 2 years and is exhausted, would be told by most traditional financial planners, hey, you got to suck it up, make your money, pay your loans off, too bad. But you have more options than that. You don't have to do that. Now, it might be financially the most viable path to go and pay off your loans and stay working and all that stuff, but you don't have to. That's what's exciting about this, is you don't have to just stick in what you've always been doing, and it's just not something that you have to do to yourself. So that's what's exciting about all these different financial independence ideas, is it just opens your mind and it shows you that you've got way more options than you think you possibly could have. So that's why we love doing what we do for SLP and for SLP Wealth, is just because it's just fun to be able to help people that have a lot of student debt know that they don't have to, have all the pain and stress and lack of options that they think they have. They have tons of options, tons and tons of options. Not seeing any additional questions here in a second. I will let y'all go. Again, for the $99 a month financial planning, and if you are a SLP client already, there's no sign up fee. If you have not done a consult yet, if you have any kind of large amount of debt, then we just give you a discounted consult, and then if you also do the financial planning at the same time. So that's that link, slpwealth.com/discount. I will screen share if anybody's on their phones that QR code that they can scan real quick. So that's in the chat and the QR code. We will try to send out the recording of this later. The first 2 minutes of it is me looking like an idiot trying to figure out how to turn on the chat because I usually have an admin in here helping me do that. But everybody's working on taxes at the moment. And then I will answer one other question while we are waiting on a couple last minute chats to come in. Somebody asked about what about their kids? That their kids are, do we want them to have student loans too? Like what's the feel on that? That's another conversation that we're able to have in a financial planning context because we can go deep because it really depends on your situation. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you have 2 people, one makes 80K and the other person makes mostly Social Security income. Even after ICR is repealed, if Parent Plus doesn't get capped, it's strategically a lot smarter to have the person with 30K of debt essentially just take out, or sorry, 30K of income, just take out a bunch of Parent Plus loans and pay on ICR. It's still a very low payment if your income's really modest, right? And then if you have kids where you're going to both have high incomes in retirement, then you probably do want to stay away from Parent Plus, and you need to think through, well, what are some ways we could get our kids out of undergrad with modest debt? And then grad school, it all depends on whether or not they cap borrowing. If they ever cap borrowing, it's going to become a lot more difficult to get into school because you'll have the factories kind of schools, right? The ones that have the largest class sizes that cost a lot, they won't be able to accommodate that anymore. And so they'll probably close or reduce their class sizes. And then it'll be a lot harder to get into grad school in the first place, which might raise everybody's wages. So maybe that's a good thing, right? But it's so speculative that what I would say is, take care of your own finances first, put on your own oxygen mask first before you put on the oxygen mask of others, right? That's what we always tell folks. And so somebody wants a spreadsheet that calculates uh, net worth with a retirement system amount of 50K per year. I'm not exactly sure what that means, so I might have to do that on the website later or something like that. Or if you have suggestions, send it to our help@slp email. Someone goes, how do taxes factor into retirement planning? That's a great question. So I'm gonna turn off my screen share real quick so I can pull up something that might be kind of fun for you to see. So I'm going to just type in capital gains tax rates. So a lot of folks don't realize that you could actually pay 0% capital gains tax rates. It's pretty wild. A lot of people might not realize that in retirement. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So this is a thing from NerdWallet here. So if you make 0 to 44,000, your capital gains, qualified capital gains tax rate is 0. If you're married, it goes up to 89. And keep in mind, there's a standard deduction here as well that you get to claim, and that's about 14,000 for singles and 28 for married. So take 14,000 and add it to 44. What is that? 58,000. So let's just call that 60, and let's call it 120 for a married couple. So if your total AGI is below 60 for an individual or 120 as a married couple, then your capital gains are 0% in retirement. That's pretty amazing, right? That's like really amazing. So there's another post somewhere on the internet about how to pay 0% or how to pay 0 in taxes in retirement. And it's a real thing. It's very, very possible. I mean, if you wanted to just really kind of quote unquote screw over the man, the man being the government, like the perfect scenario would be like to make like 125 to 150% of the poverty line, avoid realizing gains, like maximize all your health insurance subsidies and stuff like that. I'll find another example of what I mean by the health insurance subsidies. A lot of people don't know about this at all. This, like, a lot of people like hang out for a job sometimes like exclusively because of the health insurance, right? So let me see if I can find the Kaiser Family Foundation. I think has got a good example of this. Let's see. I'm just looking at this real quick. Yeah, I'm just going to find this cost sharing assistance because I think it's really fascinating if you ever retire early, to see what that does, because it's pretty crazy. So let's see. I just want to find an example of the deductibles that people would pay because it's really nuts. Let's see here. I think I've almost found it. Here we go. I found it. Yay. All right. So let's say you quit your job and you were making, I'm just going to pick up a random number here. Let's say you kept your AGI to like 18,000 a year. Maybe you did Roth conversions to do that, even though you're not working. Maybe you did very limited work. Maybe you do pre-tax retirement contributions, right? So if you had that low of an income, your student loan payments would be zero a month, right? And then if you're on the silver plan for ACA, then they have to cover with cost sharing assistance 94% of your healthcare costs, in total. And so what that works out to is if you're on a silver plan, in this particular example, the deductible would be 7,000 without any cost sharing assistance. But if you keep your income right at the right percent of the poverty line, then you can get a $150 deductible. That's not a misprint. $150 deductible instead of 7,000. Instead of a physician visit being $45, physician visits would be $5, right? Max out of pocket limit would only be 1,100 instead of 9,000 with this cost sharing assistance. So there's all types of hacks like that. So if you pair zero student loan payments with zero health insurance costs with what else? With I think I might have mentioned zero student loan costs, but if you pile all those things on top of each other, people can retire a lot earlier than you even realize. If you can take advantage of zero capital gains, you know, that's amazing. I mean, yeah, there's all kinds of hacks like this that people are just completely unaware of. So last little thing here. Again, I will put that one more time in the chat, slpwealth.com/discount. We'll do our best to send out a recording of this for folks that missed the first half. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Thanks for joining me, everyone. We'll see y'all later.